All right, so again, my name is Victoria McWilliams, and you are actually participating in the first presentation of the Success Series for the semester. This first presentation is going to celebrate first generation college students. And it's really amazing that we're doing this now because November is actually first gen month. So there's some different things that are going to go ahead and happen next month to celebrate those who are first generation college students. And so what we're going to talk about today is looking at what that means for you, how you can build some resilience in overcoming that imposter syndrome, and then also how to navigate UT Arlington in case you need a little bit of extra support. Okay, so what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is that feeling that maybe you're not good enough or you don't belong. It's a concept of describing individuals who are marked by an inability to internalize their accomplishments and persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. Now, this fraud concept and idea is something that a lot of people battle with. If you are familiar with the author, poet, civil rights activist Maya Angelou, she's has suffered from imposter syndrome, saying she's written 11 books and she thinks, oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out that I'm not good enough. And if you haven't heard of her, that's okay because there are others. So you might have heard of Tina Fey. Tina Fey is also a pretty cool lady in that she's written a book called Bossy Pants. And in her book, Bossy Pants, she talks about that imposter syndrome is vacillating between the concept of egomania and crushing fear. So it's balancing the two. So how does a person develop imposter syndrome? Well, sometimes it can be that you are not feeling comfortable or confident. So a sense of belonging sometimes fosters confidence. The more people who look around you and sound like you make you feel more confident. And conversely, the fewer people who look like you, sound like you, instills less confidence. So when I was thinking about this presentation, I started to think about what it is that I've seen from students. About 20 years ago, I was a seventh grade teacher in South Dallas, and I taught Texas history. And I had a student, a young lady, who is extremely, extremely intelligent and also knew in the seventh grade she wanted to be a lawyer. That's it. She had made up her mind. She already knew what she wanted to do. She had her mindset. That's what she was going to do. Well, when she graduated from high school, she got accepted into a prestigious Ivy League university. And she called me one day, her freshman year, and said, oh my gosh, I don't know if I belong here. I don't, people seem to know everything and I don't seem to know anything. And I really just don't feel like I belong here. Now, what she was really saying is, I don't feel comfortable. The school that she went to in high school, she was the majority. So the way they talked, the way they dressed, the way they communicated, the way they thought about things, she was very comfortable with. That was her norm. But when she went to university, she became the minority. And suddenly, the way people talk, the way people think, the way people dress is different. And so she couldn't understand that she wasn't anything less than anyone. She was just a little bit different. And that's okay. So, what imposter syndrome looks like and what it feels like. So, you say you have two circles. You have a small circle, and that is encompassing a larger circle. That small circle is what you know, all the knowledge that you have, all the experiences that you have, all the research that you've done, and that's what you know. But what you're thinking is that everybody knows so much more than you, and they are encompassing you. and they know so much and you know so little, and it makes you feel a little bit less than. But that's not reality of what life is like, okay? Reality is more like a circle or a bubble where you know what you know, and then you have circles all around it, and you overlap in little spaces. So you know a lot of things. I have a lot of experiences, have a lot of knowledge, and you share that with people. Not all people and not everything, but you share a little bit of something with the other people. So you can have that commonality. So when you're thinking about imposter syndrome, stop thinking that everybody knows more than you or everybody is more up to date or whatever, because what you have is what you need to know. Okay. So how common is imposter syndrome? In a study that I researched, about 89% of the respondents said they reported at least some level of imposter syndrome that affected their performance. So they might have already had imposter syndrome, but it was so to the extent to where they couldn't either get started on a project or finish a project, or in worst case, they self-sabotage. They see what they're supposed to do and they just kind of just miss it and ruin it because of that lack of that self-confidence. So one way to get over, or one reason to get over your imposter syndrome, is the first step is obviously to know the signs that you are having this feeling. So clues, as you can tell yourself that you're feeling that you're suffering from imposter syndrome, is that you feel like you got lucky when something happens, when in actuality you really prepared well and you really worked hard to get that accomplishment. You find it hard to accept praise. You don't want to feel like you're gloating. You apologize for yourself when you actually didn't do anything wrong. You hold yourself to an incredibly high standard, sometimes impossibly high standards. And that might be a result of stereotypes being placed upon you, and you're wanting to overcome those barriers so that what you do is not representation of your whole entire culture. Imposter syndrome could look like you finding fear, and you find the fear of failure paralyzing. You can't really move forward. I don't know if any of you watch This Is Now. It's one of my favorite shows, so I'm just going to incorporate it. One of the characters, Randall, suffers from imposter syndrome. And when he was small, his dad would put his hands across his face and say, breathe, because that fear of failure was so paralyzing, he went into a panic attack and couldn't really do what he needed to do. Another sign is to avoid expressing confidence because you think people will see it as overcompensating or being obnoxious. And finally, knowing the sign, it's convincing yourself that you're not enough, that what you know, what your abilities are, who you are, is not enough to accomplish the goal at hand. Now, I have a friend who, well, actually, I got to sit on an executive board for a state organization, and our state president was the youngest Latina president in the foundation's history. She always thought that she was not good enough because she was so young or she was a woman, but that was not the case. Those were just the things that she was thinking. So overcoming imposter syndrome, you have to know that you're not alone. Most people suffer from this at least sometime over their lifetime. It doesn't start like in elementary school. It doesn't end when you graduate from college. It will be there, but if you manage it, it won't be so bad. Overcoming the steps of imposter syndrome also means to distinguish between humility and fear. letting go of your inner perfectionism, being kind to yourself, tracking and measuring your success. Talk about these negative feelings with your mentor or a supervisor, saying yes to new opportunities, and embracing the feeling and using it. So let's get into these a little bit more. Distinguishing between humility and fear. So there's taking humility in your work and accomplishments, and then there's the feeling with fear because of them. Sometimes simply being good at something can cause us to discount its value, but it is possible to feel worthy without feeling entitled, and overcoming imposter syndrome is all about finding the balance between the two. Humility and worthiness have nothing at all to do with defending your territory, but we don't have to feel like a fraud to also be gracious, open, and humble. So distinguishing between those two. My biggest one is letting go of perfectionistic thinking. So you're hyper focused on the thought or the feeling of being perfect. It's sometimes counterproductive. No one is going to be perfect in all instances and all times. That's not possible. You're going to make mistakes, but that mistake does not discount the accomplishment. That mistake does not say that you are not worthy. A mistake is a mistake. It happens. Learn, move on, do your best, and that's good. Being kind to yourself is probably the most important thing to do. Imposter syndrome often manifests itself as the voice in your head that berates you with negative messages like you're just not smart enough or you're a fraud. And this negative self-talk is a bad habit, and it eventually can lead to more stress and anxieties. So be kind to yourself simply means changing the way in which you talk to yourself in your head by practicing positive self-talk. Not only can it help you become less stressed and anxious, but it can help you build courage to do the things that will bring you greater rewards. So, in light of that, let's look at some real-time resilience. Real-time resilience is something that happens in real time to help you overcome those counterproductive thinking and that allows you to be able to concentrate greater and focus on the task at hand. Okay? So think of Edgar Allan Poe. Who is he? He was a poet and is most often associated with the poem The Raven about death and darkness. But I don't want you to be about the death and darkness. I want you to be the anti-Poe. So the anti-Poe is P, put it in perspective, O, think optimistically, and E, evidence to counteract the thoughts, P-O-E. So P, putting it in perspective, is describing an event that's causing the anxiety. That's the first step. Then secondly, you capture all the worst case thoughts that you have. I'm going to fail the test. I'm going to do whatever. I'm not going to make this. And then generate the best thoughts possible that could come from that anxiety-inducing activity. Next, you'll need to identify the most likely outcomes and develop a plan for dealing with the most likely outcome. So this sounds pretty easy, and it's very easy to capture the worst case scenario because that's where our minds are already thinking. But when you start thinking from a positive perspective or strengths-based perspective, those best thoughts are what can come to mind. So once you start generating those best thoughts, then see how you can identify and incorporate some of those best case scenarios into how you're actually going to deal with that particular anxiety. So that's putting it in perspective. O is thinking optimistically. So I love memes. That's who I am. My friends and my family can tell you that quite easily. I send several of my friends memes every day. Um, but thinking optimistically. So one meme that I saw this week was from Black Love Doc, and they asked, "What are some of the positive affirmations you tell yourself?" And one wrote back and said, "If you weren't capable, the opportunity would have never come your way. You belong." That is very true of you being in college right now. Whether you are a freshman in college, you're starting your master's program, or you're getting your doctorate, or even being a full first-time professor. If you weren't capable, the opportunity would never have come your way. You belong. And remember what I said about getting rid of perfectionistic thinking? I know she spelled your way the wrong way, but the idea and the sentiment is there, so I wanted to make sure I included that. The next meme says, "I am not defined by the fact that my parents speak Spanish or that my skin color is brown. I am defined by my character, and my character is a strong woman that's independent, that follows her dreams, that wants love, that wants a family, that wants to succeed just like anybody else in the world." So when you're thinking about this imposter syndrome, remember you want to succeed just like anybody else in the world, and that is not an imposter. Track and measure your successes. Whatever makes you feel good about the work you do, save it, store it, put it in a notebook. I'm old, so I actually have a 3-ring notebook that I keep mementos from things that I've done well, um, accomplishments or thank yous. Keep your resume up to date. You can have a running resume that lists everything you've ever done in your entire life, and then when you're applying for a job, take those pieces out that builds the resume towards that job. But keep a nice long list of all the things that you've accomplished so that you can remember it. Okay? So, like right now, my resume is up to 7 pages, literally 7 pages. But I've done a few things, and sometimes I need to remind myself, okay, yeah, I can do this. And how do I know that? I've got the evidence that I've done this before. And this becomes the E in your PO. Track and measure your success using the evidence to prove the thought is false. So blog about it. Use both your personal life, your work life, home life, any of those successes that can build you up later when you're battling the voices in your head, when you're trying to overcome that imposter syndrome. So POE, put it in perspective, being optimistic, and using evidence. So I've given you some sentence starters when you're trying to think about PO. So for perspective, putting it in perspective, most likely the implication is blank and I can blank. I'm feeling like I can't finish this dissertation. Putting it in perspective, the most likely implication is that I'm just feeling overwhelmed and I can plan myself better so that I'm not feeling so overwhelmed. Putting it in perspective. Generating a more optimistic way of seeing things is the sentence starter would be, a better way of seeing this is. So in the dissertation, a better way of seeing this is, I have the opportunity to show why my research is really good or why it's important. Evidence, again, uses evidence to prove that a thought is false. And so the sentence starter for that would be, that's not completely true because I've done X, Y, and Z papers before. Those are also really big, major papers. Since I've done those smaller things, I can do this ginormous thing. I can do it. I've got the evidence of it. Talking with your mentor or your manager is also another way to combat your imposter syndrome. The best mentors are forthcoming about struggles they've had, mistakes they've made, and ways they've dealt with things. Mentors don't necessarily have to be people extremely older than you. It could be the person who took the class the semester before you, and they can give you some insight on how to study for that particular class. Or if you really should be taking notes on what the professor says, or just reading the book and knowing what the book says. That would be a mentor for you. Your manager, your supervisor, is also more likely to have the knowledge and tools to help you overcome your imposter syndrome in the context of your current job. So, for example, in this particular presentation, I was a little nervous about it, so I contacted my supervisor and said, "Hey, just wanted to remind you I'm giving this presentation. Any thoughts?" And she's like, "Yeah, be you." So even though it wasn't like super deep, she knew that I have the knowledge and the tools and the ability, and she just was able to remind myself of that, just like some of your friends can do. Taking a break. So a lot of these imposter syndrome thoughts that come racing in your mind really needs to stop. And the first way to stop it is to take a breath and take a break. So taking a break quiets your mind and your physiology to bring focus to the present moment, to be able to greater concentrate on the focus at hand. So what I want you to do, if you're able, is sit up straight with your arms and your legs uncrossed. Place one hand on your stomach and one hand on your chest. Take slow, deep breaths into your abdomen. Inhale for 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds, focusing on the physical sensations associated with your breathing. So in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just breathe. Not thinking, not moving, just really focused on your breath and being in this particular moment. Some of you have Fitbits or Apple Watches, and you've got the ability to look at your watch and it help you guide through slowly breathing. So take advantage of those tools just to take a break. Stop, reset, refocus your mind, and then continue. Say yes to new opportunities. A lot of times people who have imposter syndrome turn down career making opportunities because they don't feel like they're good enough to do the job. Do it. Take it. Apply for it. If a particular job says they want 17 different qualities or things that you're supposed to know, and you know 12 of them, apply anyway, because you're not 100% sure, or you can't be guaranteed that the things you don't know are things that you can learn on the job, and it's not essential to the job requirements. So apply anyway. If you have the fear of speaking out in front of other people, but the opportunity comes because your job has something, step out and do it anyway. You don't know who is in the audience that can help you get to that next level. So say yes to new opportunities. Don't let your fear take control. Control your fear by saying yes. Embracing the feeling and using it. The goal of these exercises not to get rid of your imposter syndrome. It's to stop it from hindering your success. That's it. So whatever you hear negative voice in your head, pause, take a deep breath, say to yourself, welcome back, old friend. I'm glad you're here. Let's get to work. And if that's not enough, start going through Poe, putting it in perspective, being optimistic, and then using evidence to counteract those negative thoughts. Should you need some more support, you can always go to some campus resources. Student Support Services on campus is there to help you. TRIO Student Support Services is a federally funded grant that helps students graduate from the college. You have to have some eligibility, so one of these three things in order to qualify for student support services. Either one, be a first generation college student, two, be Pell eligible, or three, be a student with a disability and registered with the Student Access and Resource Center. One of those three things. Then the SSS staff can work with you one-on-one to guide you through graduation. They do advising and coaching, mentoring, navigating different degrees, and they also have scholarships. Another program that you can use is the peer mentoring program through the Idea Center. This is to help students adapt to the college campus, become acclimated to the campus, and be a near peer support, share experiences for student success from the student perspective. Now, these are just two different departments under the university's Academic Success Center. These two offer support and allow you to connect with others and invest in your continued growth. Now, for those of you who are just listening to the presentation and not seeing it, please go by and look at the presentation because I've included links to those particular programs so that you can connect and get more help with whatever it is you need. So with that, do I have any questions? If I do, go ahead and raise your hand. All right. Well, if there are not any questions, I would like for you guys to go ahead and do a survey over the presentation. Again, you can get this through the presentation when you look it up, or you can scan the QR code or click on the link there. I will put this up again, but I also want to highlight the fact that UT Arlington is again next month contributing to First Gen celebration. So today, right now, you can download the first generation background for team virtual meetings. If you were here at the very beginning, you saw what it looks like, and I'll show it to you again because I have it up on my teams. And then on November the 6th, between 12 and 1, you have a panel discussion titled Being First, from a first-gen student to a first-gen professional and UTA faculty. Students who participate in this opportunity will learn about the personal stories and experiences of first-gen faculty and staff currently at UT Arlington. So you can come and listen and learn about how they navigated through college and into their career. The event is sponsored by the Division of Student Success, and the event link is there for you. So again, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation survey. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. You can always do that. I will answer those as they come in. Also, if it's more personal, I will have your name so I can look you up and email you personally and discuss whatever it is there. So when you're looking at imposter syndrome, remember, it's not that you're trying to get rid of it. They're trying to move it out of your way so that you can get through what you're needing to get through. So this is the first session of the Student Success Series. Our next topic is going to be study tips. We'll also cover financial aid and healthy living in future broadcasts, meetings. So be on the lookout for that. Everyone, you have a great day, and please let us know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.